I never thought I'd be sitting here, writing this kind of story, but here we are. My name's Mike, and I was married to Lisa for about 6 years. On the surface, everything seemed fine. We had a good life, a decent house, two adorable kids, and a regular routine. I worked long hours as an engineer, and Lisa stayed home with the kids, or so I thought. Honestly, I always trusted her, stupidly so maybe. But I noticed little things that started to bug me over the last few months. Small stuff: missing phone calls, late nights with work, her phone ringing at odd hours, and her becoming increasingly bitchy whenever I tried to ask where she'd been or who she'd been talking to. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe she was stressed, or maybe I was just imagining things. But then came the big red flag. One evening, I was coming home early from work because I wasn't feeling great. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw her car parked in front, but something was off. The garage was supposed to be empty, and the house looked unusually quiet. I figured maybe she was out. But then I noticed something on the porch. It was a small object, something I didn't recognize at first, but it looked like a small condom wrapper. My stomach clenched. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the world felt like it was tilting. I quietly parked the car and waited. I didn't want her to see me just yet. When she finally came in, I was already at the top of the stairs, watching her. She looked different, more confident, a little too smug. I saw her wipe her phone quickly as she saw me, and that made my blood boil. I was about to confront her then and there, but I decided to hold back. I wanted to catch her in the act, not just accuse her based on a stupid wrapper. That's when I remembered something. A few days ago, I'd installed a nanny cam in the house, nothing fancy. Just a little device I set up in the living room where I suspected she might meet someone. I didn't tell her because I knew she'd flip out, but I needed proof. That night, I pulled out my phone and checked the footage. It took a while, but I finally saw it. I saw her, Lisa, meeting with someone, her home assessment caseworker, Tom. It was unmistakable. They were sneaking off into the guest bedroom, closing the door behind them. The footage showed them kissing, touching, and what I can only describe as wild sex. I couldn't believe it at first. This was my wife, cheating with someone who was supposed to come evaluate us for an adoption case. It felt like a punch to the stomach. They didn't even try to hide it. I saw her go down on him, then him pounding her from behind, her moaning loudly. It was real. It was raw, and it was happening right in my house, behind my back. My heart was pounding so loud I thought it would burst out of my chest. I couldn't believe she'd do this. Not just cheat on me, but do it with someone who came into our home, who was supposed to be helping us adopt a child. It was like the worst possible betrayal I could imagine. I stared at the screen, speechless, feeling all the anger, sadness, and disgust welling up inside me. How could she? How could she lie, cheat, and pretend everything was fine while she was screwing the guy in our guest room? That's when I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just let her get away with it, not after what I saw. I needed to confront her, but I also needed a plan. I decided to wait until the morning, let her go to bed, and then I'd talk to her. I wanted to see how she'd react, what she'd say, and then I'd decide what to do next. All I knew was that this wasn't just a mistake or an affair. It was a full-blown betrayal, and I was in shock. I felt numb, betrayed, and lost. I kept replaying the footage in my head, wondering how I'd ever look at her the same way again. The night was unbearably long. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to process what I'd just seen. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, Lisa, moaning, her face flushed with pleasure, the way she responded to him like she was craving every second of that stolen moment. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I failed to see what was right in front of me. I know that women can be good at hiding things, but this was next level. She had been so convincing when she'd lied about her calls, her late nights, her work trips. All of it was a lie. Every excuse she'd given, every time she told me she was busy or tired, it was all bullshit. I remember feeling this wave of anger building up inside me, hot and relentless. How dare she? How dare she cheat on me behind my back in our own house? The house I worked so hard for, the house I thought was a symbol of our life together. And the guy, Tom, he wasn't just some random guy. No, he was the caseworker. The guy who was supposed to help us with the adoption. That made it even worse. It wasn't just an affair, it was a grotesque betrayal of trust. They were doing this in my home, in my space, and I had no idea. The next morning, I woke up early, still feeling sick about everything. I knew I had to confront her, but I wasn't sure how. I also knew I couldn't hide the footage, not anymore. I wanted her to see it herself. I got up, grabbed my laptop, and loaded the video. I knew she'd deny it, lie her way out of it, but I needed her to face the truth. I planned to show her the footage and see what she'd say. I wanted her to own up to her bullshit, to her lies and her sexcapades with Tom. She was still asleep when I went into the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed and hesitated. My hands were trembling. I felt a mixture of rage and heartbreak. I pressed play and watched her in the dim morning light. She was so reckless, so cocky. She didn't even bother to hide her face. In fact, she seemed to revel in the fact that she could get away with it. I saw her lift her head, moan loudly, her hair messy, her face flushed. I saw him, Tom, pounding her, the two of them tangled in something that felt like a nightmare. I couldn't look away. I was stunned, frozen, feeling every betrayal hit a new level. When the video ended, I just stared at her sleeping face, my mind racing. I couldn't believe I was about to do this. I felt sick, but I knew I had to confront her. I took a deep breath, got up, and sat beside her, shaking. I carefully took out my phone and played the video again right in front of her. She stirred, eyes fluttering open, and then she saw what I was showing her. Her reaction was instant. She sat bolt upright, eyes wide with shock, then quickly shifted to anger. "What the hell is that?" she snapped, trying to snatch the phone away. But I held it steady, my voice trembling but determined. "You tell me, Lisa, you've been screwing him in our house, your caseworker, Tom, while I was working, while I thought everything was fine. Were you really that bored or just that desperate for some stupid sex?" She sat there for a second, mouth open, then she started lying as usual. "It's not what you think, it's just a stupid mistake. I was stressed, okay? We're under a lot of pressure with the adoption and he's just a friend, I swear. It's not what it looks like." Her voice was high-pitched, defensive, like she was trying to spin the situation into something benign. But I didn't buy it, not for a second. I knew better. I saw everything I needed to see, and she was lying through her teeth. The betrayal hit me hard. I felt this coldness seep into my chest like I'd been punched in the gut. I looked at her, trying to find any sign of remorse, any hint that she might be telling the truth. But no, she was just bitchy, angry, trying to cover her ass. That's when I realized I was done. Done with her bullshit, done with the lies. I couldn't stay married to someone who thought cheating was acceptable, who could lie so convincingly. The rest of that day was a blur. I kept replaying the footage, trying to understand how I missed all the signs. I wanted to be angry at her, but I also felt a deep sadness, the kind that makes your chest ache and your stomach turn. I asked myself if I could forgive her if I wanted to. Honestly, I didn't know anymore. All I knew was that I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. Not after seeing what I saw. The trust was shattered. And I was left with this aching feeling of betrayal that I wasn't sure I'd ever get over. After I showed her the footage, Lisa's face twisted into this mixture of fury and contempt. She sat there, eyes blazing, her mouth trembling with anger. "You have no right to accuse me of anything," she snapped. "That's just some stupid video you found on your phone. You're overreacting. I've been stressed, overwhelmed, and you're just making stuff up because you're insecure. This isn't about us, it's about your paranoia." She scoffed and looked away, trying to dismiss the whole thing like it was nothing, but I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I could see right through her lies, her typical manipulation. She always knew how to spin things in her favor, how to turn the story around and make me the villain. But this time, her game was exposed. I told her I wasn't done, that I wanted the truth, and she needed to tell me what was really going on. Her voice got even bitchier, more dismissive. "You're nuts. You think I'd cheat on you with some random guy? Tom's just a friend. We're under a lot of pressure. Trying to get this adoption sorted. It's all a mistake and you're blowing it out of proportion." That's when I lost it. I'd had enough of her lies, enough of her bullshit. I told her she could keep lying, but I had seen enough. I told her I'd be talking to an attorney, that she wasn't going to get away with this. She rolled her eyes and snapped, "Go ahead, call the lawyer. Nothing will change. You're just bitter because I don't want to be with a jealous, insecure man like you anymore." She looked at me with such venom, like she hated me, like I was the enemy. That moment made everything crystal clear. She was done pretending. She wanted out, wanted to keep screwing around, and she didn't care how much it hurt me. I was so furious I couldn't even speak. My hands were clenched, trembling with rage. I wanted to scream at her, rip into her, but all I could do was sit there in shock. I felt this deep betrayal, like my entire world had crumbled in those seconds. I'd married a woman who was capable of sneaking off to cheat in our own house, who lied and gaslighted her way through it all, and then had the nerve to accuse me of being insecure. It was so surreal I wondered if I was in some terrible nightmare. I remember feeling sadness too. Not just anger, but this terrible ache that I'd lost the person I thought I knew. The woman I loved, the mother of my children, had turned into someone I hardly recognized. Someone selfish, manipulative, and cruel. I kept asking myself how I'd missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind to her lies. And I wondered what I was supposed to do now, whether to fight to stay or to walk away from everything I'd built. The truth was, I didn't want to believe she could be so heartless, but the evidence was right there, staring me in the face. That afternoon, after she stormed off to take some space, I sat alone in the living room, feeling numb. I was trying to process what had happened, what I should do next. Part of me wanted to just forget it, pretend I never saw that footage, never confronted her, and try to move on like everything was fine. But deep down, I knew that was impossible. Trust, once broken like that, isn't something you can just patch up with a few apologies or promises to change. It takes time, and honestly, I wasn't sure I could ever truly forgive her. Not after knowing she'd been screwing Tom, our caseworker in our house, while I was clueless about everything. That betrayal cut so deep I didn't know if I could ever come back from it. I spent the rest of that day trying to piece together what I'd do. I called a lawyer just to know my options, and then I sat there staring at the ceiling, feeling empty. I kept asking myself if I should give her a chance, if I wanted to try to save this marriage, or if I should just walk away. The pain of knowing she'd lied so blatantly, cheated so brazenly, made me realize I'd been living in a fantasy world. The woman I thought I married was gone. She was replaced by someone who cared only about her needs, her pleasure, her lies. And that realization was perhaps the most crushing of all. The next few days were a whirlwind. I kept replaying everything in my head, trying to figure out how I'd let it get this far. I felt like I had been hit by a freight train of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness, and this gnawing sense that I'd been so naive. Lisa, of course, continued to deny everything, throwing around words like misunderstanding, stress, and you're just jealous and insecure. She acted like I was overreacting, like I was the one making a big deal out of nothing. But I knew better. I'd seen what I saw on that footage, and I wasn't about to be fooled again. She started to get bitchy, even more so than before. Every time I brought up the video, she'd roll her eyes or throw some excuse about how I was controlling, paranoid, or crazy. She told me her sex life was none of my business, that I was suffocating her. It was like she wanted me to just accept her cheating, to pretend it never happened. I wasn't about to do that. I told her she needed to leave, or I'd call a lawyer to start proceedings. That really pissed her off. She snapped at me, called me pathetic, and said she'd see me in court. At this point, I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep going on like this, living in this toxic mess. I stayed silent most of the time, just watching her spin her lies and gaslight me. I'd never felt so powerless in my life. My trust was shattered, and I felt like I was drowning in a sea of betrayal. I started to think about what I wanted long term. Could I forgive her? Could I rebuild my life with someone who had lied so blatantly? Honestly, I didn't see a way forward. The image of her with Tom kept flashing in my mind, and every time it felt like a punch to the gut. One night I decided I'd had enough. I sat her down and told her I wanted a divorce. Her face twisted into this snide smirk, like she was happy about it. "Good," she spat. "You're a fool for trusting me in the first place." She looked at me with this tone of contempt, like she'd already won. I simply told her I'd be filing the papers in the morning, and that I wanted her out of the house by the end of the week. She sneered and said I was making a mistake, that I'd regret throwing everything away. But I knew this was beyond regret. It was about survival now. Trust, love, respect. They were all gone, replaced by this bitter, hollow feeling I couldn't shake. Over the next few days, I packed up her things, feeling more numb than angry. I kept thinking about the woman I married, how she'd changed so completely. I wondered if she'd ever really loved me or if I was just a placeholder for her fantasy life. I felt this heavy weight on my chest, like I was carrying a burden I couldn't unload. I also worried about the kids. How do I explain this mess to them? How do I keep them from sensing the tension, the betrayal? I knew I had to stay strong for them, but inside I was falling apart. Finally, the day came when she left, storming out with her bags, calling me pathetic one last time. I watched her go, feeling a strange mixture of relief and heartbreak. I never imagined I'd be in this position, married, betrayed, feeling like a fool. But that's life. Sometimes the truth hits you like a ton of bricks and there's no going back. I realized I'd been living in a fantasy, believing in her love, her honesty. Now I was faced with the harsh reality that she'd been screwing someone in our own house, lying to my face and trying to pretend everything was normal. I knew I'd need time to heal, to trust again, or maybe not at all. All I knew for sure was that I wouldn't let her destroy me with her lies anymore. I was done. The aftermath was a blur of legal calls, emotional exhaustion, and trying to keep everything together for the kids. I filed for divorce, and the process was somehow more draining than I expected. Seeing her signature on those papers, knowing she was officially gone, felt like a small victory but also like an open wound. I kept asking myself how I'd let it get this far, how I didn't see her true nature sooner. I was angry, yes, but mostly just heartbroken. The woman I loved, the woman I married, had thrown everything away for a quick fuck in our house with a caseworker we trusted. While I tried to keep things normal for the kids, I didn't want them to feel the chaos. But every night I'd sit in my room, staring at the ceiling, trying to block out the guilt and shame. I kept telling myself I could have done something different, but deep down, I knew I'd been blind. I had missed the signs, ignored the tiny red flags until it was too late. The worst part, I still felt this irrational hope that maybe someday she'd realize what she'd lost. But then I remembered the footage, the lies, her bitchy attitude and manipulations. That hope was slowly dying. One thing I learned is that trust is incredibly fragile. I never thought I'd be one of those guys who got played like a fool, but I was. I thought I knew her, thought she was honest and caring. Turns out she was just good at pretending. That experience changed me. I became more guarded, more cautious. I started questioning everything. Did she ever really love me, or was I just convenient? Those questions haunted me, and truthfully, I still grapple with them. And I don't think I'll ever fully trust again, not the way I did before. I also realized that I wasn't alone in feeling like this. I reached out to some friends, and surprisingly, I found a lot of guys who went through similar betrayals. It helped, honestly. Knowing I wasn't the only one who'd been screwed over made it a little easier to breathe. I learned to focus on my healing, on my kids, and on building a future without her. That's what kept me going. I even started therapy, trying to process the betrayal, the anger, the sadness. It's a slow process, but I'm getting there. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the signs sooner. I wish I'd been more suspicious, more aware. But I also realize that some things are just hard to spot until it's too late. The key now is moving on. I want to be better, stronger, someone who doesn't get fooled that easily again. I still feel the sting of betrayal, but I refuse to let it define me. At the end of the day, I learned a brutal lesson about trust, honesty, and the importance of paying attention to the small signs. Because sometimes the biggest betrayals come from the people you least expect. And they leave scars you carry forever. But I'm determined to heal, to keep going for my kids and myself. That's all I can do now. Now looking back, I realize that the whole experience changed me in ways I never expected. I used to believe that love and trust were the foundation of any relationship, but that was naive. What I learned is that those things are fragile, and sometimes people hide who they really are behind a mask of charm and deception. Lisa was good at hiding her true nature, so good that I didn't see the signs until it was too late. The betrayal hurt so badly because I had genuinely believed in us, in what we had built, but her actions proved otherwise. The hardest part was accepting that I'd been played for a fool. I kept asking myself why she did it, what she was looking for that I couldn't give her. Maybe she was bored, maybe she wanted excitement, or maybe she just didn't love me at all. I'll probably never get a clear answer, and honestly, I don't care as much anymore. What matters is that I'm learning to move past it, to rebuild my life on my own terms. I've come to understand that sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away from a toxic, broken relationship and focus on healing and growth. The kids have been a huge motivation. They're the reason I get up every day and keep fighting through the pain. I want to give them a stable, honest life, something that I can be proud of. It's not easy, but I know I have to be strong for them. Sometimes I catch myself wondering how I'll explain all of this someday, how I'll tell them that their mother was capable of such deceit. But I also remind myself that they need to see that even after betrayal, you can pick yourself up and keep going. That resilience is what truly defines strength. There's a certain bitterness that lingers, of course. I still get angry sometimes, angry at her, at Tom, at myself for not seeing the signs sooner. But I've learned to channel that anger into something productive. I work out more, focus on my career, and spend quality time with my kids. I've started dating again, cautiously, but I refuse to let the fear of being hurt again keep me from living. Trust isn't given freely anymore, not after she shattered it, but I believe in the possibility of genuine connection. I just know now to be more careful. Ultimately, I think this experience has made me more cautious but also more aware of what I deserve. No one should settle for lies and betrayal, no matter how much they love someone. The pain fades with time, and I hope someday I'll look back without the ache, knowing I survived. I learned that some betrayals are so deep that they change you forever, but they also teach you what truly matters: truth, honesty, and respect. I'm grateful for the lessons, painful as they are, because now I know what's worth fighting for and what to leave behind. Life goes on, and someday I believe I'll find someone who values me for who I am, not who I pretended to be. And for now, that's enough.